So, right, with no further ado, we're going to go on to that interview now, which is a lady called Sheva Burton. I spoke to her the other day and recorded a really good interview. She's a campaigner against child abuse, as well as a supporter and healer of survivors of child abuse. And she runs a group called Cross of Change. And she's starting a campaign called Join the Dots, and she'll tell us all about it. So stay where you're sitting, don't touch your dials, because Sheva Burton is up next. Hospital Porter's pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO Radio. Sheva Burton, welcome to HPANWO Radio. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hello. Sorry.
It's all right.
I just got sidetracked there. I'm very well. I'm tired because I've been involved in sort of readjusting some of the group work that I do around the child abuse issues.
Definitely. That's what we'll be talking all about your the work you're doing at the moment as part of Join the Dots and the Cross of Change. But tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved in this business.
Okay. Well, I was abused in my childhood, and in my case, it was my father, and it was really well into my 30s that I had tried to talk about it, even during my teens and throughout my life. But it was really in my 30s, and when Childline was started by Esther Ranson, that I found that I just could not sort of keeping a lid on it or keeping quiet about it. And I would still just bury it and carry on because I couldn't find anywhere to go or anyone who I could sort of turn to for help. And it was in the late 80s that I found a small group of survivors of child abuse. And I went along, and it took me months to have the courage to do that. So, it can be really nerve-wracking opening all of this up. But it was the first time that I met other people and realised that not only was I not alone, but as the weeks and months turned into a few years, and I'd been sort of going to different conferences and workshops and talking with others, I was being told about child abuse. People were telling me they'd been abused in children's homes, and judges and high-powered people were involved. And this was a tremendous shock to me because I had walked around for so long thinking it was a very rare thing because nobody talked about it. We didn't have press coverage like we do now, or, it wasn't on the sort of local, the regular soap opera. Things have changed dramatically since then, but over the years, I did attempt to sue my father, and I was the first woman in this country to attempt that. And just before I would have won, the House of Lords changed the law on the statutes of limitations, and I was beside myself with anger, and so were others. And it was out of that I then decided to try and organise a march and rally because I felt it was about time that we let the world know that there were lots of us around, it was happening far more commonly than was being recognised, and that we needed more help and more justice. And so that's what I did in 93. It was hard work, but we did it all around a kitchen table. We didn't have the internet. And we just sent leaflets off to any relevant community group or rape crisis group, things like that we could find. And it turned out tremendous. 1,400 people marched down Park Lane. We were roaring with the outrage about it all. We were sharing our stories. We had a public open mic. And so that was then, and I think lots of us were very hopeful. There are certainly sites today that still were concretized around that time and grew into being very big and very well known and solid websites now. They're still around. But it's been sort of over the years. I stopped being involved in the marches and rallies, but they continued. But they became very small and hardly anybody knew about them. And I found out they were going on in 2009 and returned, and then just realised that I wanted to inject the energy back that we had originally, which was much looser controls and much more spontaneity encouraged. You know, and we're like almost any other subject. We also have our areas where infighting can get in the way, or false flag stories sort of take up a lot of energy, or trolls come around and cause trouble. So we have our problems too. But my main wish has always been for groups to unite as much as possible, sometimes, because we need different types of groups for different types of people, but sometimes we need to unite and get on the same message and really make a lot of noise, because, you know, the knowledge of child abuse has grown, but that knowledge could have grown much faster if we hadn't been ignored in the early 90s.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I remember very well, because I was a child at the time when Childline began, and Esther Ranson and all the others were... There was this big, long sort of charity evening event on telly, and it was really quite surprising because we had features on it at school as well, and it was a bit of a surprise. I think it was a surprise to everybody that it was something so common, and it had been going on a long time, and some very elderly people came on the news and explained how when they were children, they were abused, and no one, was no one around to help out. Now, I think the main difference I found between what I saw back then and what I know now is that, as shocking as what was sort of revealed to the public in the 1980s with the launch of Childline, it was not half as shocking as what I've found out since then is the truth, because that event, that charity event, the launch of Childline, no matter how common and widespread they said child abuse was, they always portrayed it as something disorganised, individual, and a crime of one individual against another. There was no hint at all when I was that age on television, watching this on television, that it was in any way organised or institutional. And this is, I think, the big discrepancy that I found out since, that it is going on. It is as widespread as they say, even more so, but it is institutional. I mean, how did you come about on this? I mean, you explained how you met people who were abused by judges and people like that. Now,
yeah.
What was the reaction from sort of the kind of the part of the child abuse campaigning network, people like Esther Ranson, who... They
didn't want to know us. They wouldn't dialogue with us. They wouldn't add to our campaigns. In fact, I first rang Childline, in fact, in '88, and it was 5 years later when I did it. But the woman there said, there's no point in marching. We'll just be called a bunch of lesbians by the Daily Mail and blah, blah, blah. And I just said, well, so what? Because my attitude was that, for me, I think it was dawning on me very much so that, much as I understood our need to protect ourselves, and we did, and we still do have to, at times and in ways, no, they wouldn't. The secret was not going to be broken except by us.
Yeah.
This secret knowledge. And I met a girl, we were both in the House of Commons one day, and it was really just a kind of press launch, really. Community Care magazine were there. There's an old photo of us in that somewhere. But she talked to me afterwards, and she'd been helping to set up an office, I think it was in North London, and it was strictly trying to out this abuse within the children homes, and they had a bomb threat. And I think they might have even had a fire and had to just shut down.
Oh my goodness. And I mean...
apart from that...
This fits in... Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go on, you go.
I was going to say this fits in with a lot that's been discovered since. I mean, I think the exposure of Jimmy Savile, which is the last few months, excuse me, I mean, Esther Ranson, her reaction to this was really quite appalling and really quite dismaying. She kind of said this was the woman who was the champion of children, supposedly a champion of children, saying, well, I sort of heard rumours about it, but I didn't think I should do anything, I didn't say anything to anyone, and I thought the casual way she spoke about it, she was almost like in denial.
It's bothered a lot of people, and I know for me and many of us back then in the late 80s, 90s, when a lot of us were sort of waking up, and some of that was triggered by what happened with Esther Ranson and her program. So we didn't still have anywhere much to turn to. So some of us were ringing up Childline saying, what do we do? And they were very often very...
Hello?
Children today.
No. So, I mean, I think we should reiterate here, Sheva, that, I mean, as much as I respect a lot of the people in Childline and what they do, they are misrepresenting the issue. They're saying child abuse is widespread, it's common, we know, but it's just lone individuals operating independently, abusing children for their own amusement, not without any connection to anyone else. They're individuals, and they're operating secretly just within the family. That's not true. It's an organised, institutional crime that's going on here, a crime against humanity that is, and I think that's an important thing everyone has to understand. And you yourself and your organisation became the sort of mainstream anti-child abuse people were very, very hostile to you.
Well, they were sort of abrupt, and a lot of us, we came off feeling guilty for, we were made to feel guilty for clogging up the lines. And of course we understood that, and we wanted children protected. But there was no alternative, and I would have thought that they could have realised there was such a need, and they were in prime position to perhaps flag that up and get something done more than did happen. It's been a struggle all of the way, really, for survivors of abuse to get the story out.
Why do you think that they were so unwilling to sort of go into this area where you were going?
I don't know, except that they're part of the institutional system, and they all seem to overlap and affect each other and influence each other through different means, whether it's they're on the boards of various charities, or there's money involved in some places and cases that don't really sit well. It's difficult to know, except that, is it just the best kept secret? Because...
Well, I have a feeling that if Esther Ranson ever actually came on TV and said, well, actually, I've changed my mind, I should add a little bit to what I've been saying all these years. Child abuse is institutional, it's organised, and the governments, state organisation, corporations, churches are all collaborating on a massive scale to abuse children. You know what would happen to her? She transformed from, this mother-like heroine of the airwaves to nutcase, go off with that Brian Gerrish and share a stage with him and stuff like that.
Possibly. I'm sure she had all kinds of pressures on her that meant that she didn't bring it out or got herself into denying it. I just I can't really know.
I'm not accusing. I'm certainly not.
And I know that Childline also, like you say, there's some very good people, and they did a lot of good too.
Yeah, I'm not accusing Esther Ranson deliberately.
No, I know. Just trying to work out why this didn't get raised sooner, because I know that I appeared on Kilroy a few times back then, and the first time they insisted that they offered me, they said that I could be blacked out, and I said, well, I don't want to be, actually, because I've done nothing wrong. Why should I look like I'm ashamed? So they went away and had a meeting and said, actually, we have to black you out because your father might sue us. And I said, well, in that case, you're protecting yourselves and you're protecting him. Please don't try and pretend that you're trying to protect me, because I don't want to be. And it took a few more goes, but eventually Kilroy did allow us on, but we were under very strict rules. We were live and we were under very strict rules of what we couldn't say. But a few, sort of rebellious people did stand up on that live show, and they had names and places of children's homes and things like that. It went down very badly with Kilroy.
I bet it did.
It really did.
Can you get it recorded? Is it online?
I'm not sure. I've got a few old recordings here, which I've got to get out and get them online if I can. I'm not sure if I've got that one, but it'd be fun if I have.
Yeah,
but it's not through want of trying.
I bet.
I mean, I did an interview before I met you at the meeting that I know we're going to cover a little bit. I did an interview with Mel V, and it was either during it or as we were talking before or after, and she said, the whole survivor movement has been fooled by this thing. And I said, you're kidding. There's a whole huge movement of very active people with tremendous integrity and sensitivity and determination that have been working, some of them for a long, long time on this. And some of the sites have massive memberships. And that's the real movement that I'm now trying to, get sort of channeled and see if we can find a way to join up a bit more. We're calling it Join the Dots at the moment, just to try and keep it simple so that all kinds of organisations can perhaps include the Join the Dots message so that we have a common theme and we can really gather the statistics and information and make this picture clear. Because recently it was on the BBC that they've admitted in a recent inquiry that they didn't join the dots. Yeah. And there's no real excuse for that.
Well, I mean,
the information is out there.
My own suspicion is, for this to have gone on at such a scale for all this time. Now, like Jimmy Savile, of course, had a career with the BBC. It was almost 50 years for it to have gone on that long. Cause he was doing it from the very start. For it to have gone on that long under their noses is not just incompetent. It's not just, oh dear, sorry, we've messed up. It must have been a massive institution of collaboration around him, and God knows how many others.
There has been, and even that first rally tells me that, because the whole rally was filmed by BBC Two, and the plan was that they were going to have a programme featuring it, and they did a wonderful job. But afterwards, they called us and said, actually, we've all just walked out because we've been told it can't be shown.
Oh, God, I remember.
It did get shown, little bits of it, but alongside false memory syndrome, which was later proven to have been started by a paedophile organisation.
Oh, don't start me on that, yeah.
This tells me that there were things at work even then around that. Also, I was supposed to appear on Radio 4 the morning of the march, which would have increased our profile tremendously, and it was suddenly cancelled in the middle of the night.
Oh, dear.
And sort of went downhill from then, and then it turned into programmes about false memory syndrome, so they were ready to doubt our word now that we were getting more and more vocal and more strong. And then, as I say, eventually, I think the groups that were running it, which are good groups, but they're relying on funding, and the rules were that no speeches were allowed to be aired and no photographs shown, supposedly because there were children present, but this destroys the whole point of those rallies, which was to get the truth out in a very big way.
I think this is something that Kevin Annett would be interested in, because he's been a guest on this program before. What the way I see it, there's obviously what you've described in terms of the cover-up, but also, I suppose, if for instance, I don't like to put myself in this position, even in my imagination, but if, for instance, I was running this institutional ring, and I wanted to keep it quiet, I knew people were becoming more aware of the problem. I would sit around and I'd say, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a massive. We're going to be seen to be doing an awful lot about it. We're going to have a massive, telethon type event. and we're going to have Childline, and we're going to make it look as if we're really doing something about it, but we're going to keep stressing the point. There's nothing going on behind the scenes. It's all individuals, and if anyone comes along talking about anything organised, we shut them down. We don't let them become a part of it. We keep them out of our midst, and make them look fringe and stupid and things like that. So that's what I think seems to have happened. I think this is the trick that's been played, sadly. And they get well-meaning people. I mean, Esther Ranson, I think, is probably a genuine person. They get well-meaning people to come and join in. Kevin Annett described something very similar that's been going on in Canada.
We've spoken and shared some of this. There are common themes that we all seem to have happen when we're working within this issue. And but another thing sort of has come across my radar since, and some of it was through personal experience, and some of it is just that I'm also involved in a lot of groups where this is happening to people. And a lot of survivors of child abuse, about 60% of the children going into care now are from parents that were abused.
Right.
Now, the very bothering part of it for me as well, apart from that a lot of them turn to social services in the first place for help, or they've had depression and, needed help with that, and that's got them onto the radar. But often it's ending up that they're being sent to see a psychiatrist who then totally, describes them in sort of with mental health labels like Munchausen's by proxy, or what's the other one? Borderline personality, and the children are being taken for the risk that they might harm them in the future. Usually emotional harm is the one quoted. And this is happening in a lot of cases. Now, obviously, I want children protected, and abused children need to be rescued when the abuse is really going on. But this is going on in a great many cases and looking like child protection. But the same psychiatrists in many cases are wearing three hats. And the three hats are that not only are they being these expert witnesses in the secret family courts like this and condemning innocent parents as likely to harm, but they're also training social workers and other professionals, often as well, in the effects of abuse. This doesn't, to me, seem to be filtering down to helping us. Rather, it's giving them labels to use and things to look out for, but in a negative and judgmental way that is very harmful, actually, when you've been traumatized already. And then on top of that, a great deal of them are wearing a third hat, which is that they go into prisons and work with some of the worst sex offenders.
Right.
Now this, for me, and a lot of the stories that I hear from survivors who've been through mental health system, and again, I hear good ones too, here and there, not enough, but some, but in too many cases, I'm hearing absolute horror stories about the way that they've been mistreated within mental health and come out the other side even more traumatized than ever before. Now, it's hard for me to see the psychiatric profession, as a source of help in this arena.
I mean, this is a subject I could talk about myself because I've had personal experience in it, but it's such a huge subject. It's just so incredible. Now, Sheva, I met you, when I first met you, we were at an event in London at the Inspired by Ike group, and the Holly Gregg hoax group was speaking there. Now, I spoke about this in detail on a previous show, but basically, the Holly Gregg hoax team are the people who have basically come out and explained that the Holly Gregg business, this Holly Gregg case that was the centre of everything we were doing for a couple of years, is actually a complete scam. And unfortunately, there's a small group of people who are still convinced that it's real, and they put a lot of very, very negative, quite cruel pressure, nasty pressure on people not to host this group at this meeting. Now, I know that the woman organising the meeting got a rather nasty phone call from someone, sort of basically demanding that she cancels it, and she refused to cave in. So, a lot of respect to her for that. But now, your own experience, we seem to be in a situation where there is a lot of infighting in this campaign. What's your own experience of that?
Well, the reason I'll backtrack a bit.
Sure, no worries.
I've explained already that I went back in 2009 and then decided that I would sort of pick back up and push some energy into freeing it up again and really allowing the survivors to speak again more freely, and that it would be published afterwards so that it the world could hear us.
Yeah.
And I worked very hard to make sure that was going to happen. But the person alongside me running it had, without me knowing, become friendly with, can I mention Belinda?
Yeah,
people
sure.
by name, Belinda McKenzie, and I think she'd been to see David Icke and had a meeting with Bill Maloney and Robert Greene, and they seemed to have decided, without me being there because I was ill at the time, that they were going to run the rally differently, and it became about them and them having speeches and them controlling who else spoke. So it just literally changed before my eyes, and I was pushed to the side, I was bullied, I was called names before, during and after, and that was all unpleasant, but I sort of took quite a bit of the responsibility onto myself because I had been triggered a few weeks before, and unfortunately the trigger is one that's tied in with alcohol being given to me as a child, and I couldn't not start hitting the bottle for a while. But before I went away to sort myself out and be ready for the rally, I did let Truth and Hope know that that's what I was doing, but all my work was done. I'd been talking to survivors for a year, and so many had been preparing to come, writing poems, having a few were going to get up and sing a song with me. We had lots of creative things ready. But I came back to this idea, and when I tried to hold off these speakers by saying, look, they've already got websites, they've got the word out, they can maybe could they go on at the end, because it's going to be quite nerve-wracking for a lot of people to get up and speak as it is without having to follow well-known speakers that are very practiced. And it was just everything that I had done and achieved was totally rubbish. And then the videos came out without cross of change on them. They were Truth and Hope now. Everybody was told that Truth and Hope had begun the rallies. And when I looked up my old videos that were now taken down of the 94 rally, it was gone and my tape had been wiped clean. Now, there's been a couple of years gone on since then, and looking back, you see, for me, the Holly Gregg team were just one of many groups. I had groups from all over the world and lists of them in my group. So I basically was promoting all of the groups and encouraging them all to flourish and them all to talk to each other where possible and join up and let's get things moving. And they were just one of many. But what I was finding all along was that you couldn't go into a Holly Gregg group and talk about another case. They didn't want them to be shown my group because, of course, it contained almost everything under the sun, not just Holly. And, you know, they had sort of 30,000 members very quickly. They were using the campaign tools to the max. But when you say to me, well, we've all been focusing on Holly and Holly only, that's how they somehow they swept us out of the way, and they've gone whoosh right through the truther movement.
Yes,
right through the whole level of it seems. And at the same time, though, they've rubbed out much of our, what I call the real campaign, and our historic campaigns. And that makes me then suspect that there's someone pulling strings somewhere that still wants our voices suppressed.
Yeah.
And that's why I did conclude that because of the way of the campaign as much as anything. Secondly, because of, I don't know anybody else who would want their mother to take them around and talk about them in the way that's been done. Mm. And I can't see that Holly herself had a clear choice there. Yeah. And there's lots of things that really bother me and that do not sound or look or feel like a real campaign.
And there's one thing for certain. I mean, we've been. Unfortunately, I was involved in this as well, and I've apologised to all the people involved. Who was targeted, or including yourself as well, who were sidelined. But we spent 2 years or more chasing this mirage. Everyone was involved in it, and just imagine what we could have achieved if we hadn't. And like I said, the manipulators, the people keeping the secret, whether they actually engineered the Holly Gregg case or controlled it, or whether it just happened spontaneously, there's no doubt it did them an enormous favour.
It did.
It did them a huge favour.
And you see, just by wiping me and Cross of Change away, they wiped the whole world of the abuse movement away.
Yeah, it's a mistake we must not make again. Definitely.
Because nobody was quite managing to do what I was at that stage. But since then, Facebook have changed the groups. I don't have that resource library in there anymore. And I never did have the technical skill to get it all up onto a database. But that was what Truth and Hope had promised. And so the fact that that didn't happen and that this other thing did, it just leaves those questions for me that why? Why would you not do the very thing that could have, educated the world very quickly? But we're doing it now.
That's it. Well, hopefully, we can make up for lost ground. I mean, we made a terrible mistake. We mustn't make it again.
Me too, though. I publicised them as much as everyone else. I did.
Yeah, I think everyone did at some point. Now it's sort of split into. Most of the people in the truth movement just don't even talk about it anymore. David Icke stopped talking about it. Richard D. Hall stopped talking about it. There's people like myself who speak quite openly now, discussing it and saying that it was a hoax. There are just a handful now of loyalists, mostly around Belinda, who are just still maintaining that it's real. But
yeah. But going back to that, I also had some very vile messages, an attempt by Belinda in a group that really shouldn't have happened in, really implying that some very nasty things if people went to this meeting, but also mentioning legal documents that I asked her very publicly to demonstrate that she had, or to send to the organisers, which they had requested too, and they never showed up. And so that's another massive red flag, not just to me, but to other campaigners, because I mean, you've been in my group a little while now in Cross of Change. We're not very active because we're kind of switching into Join the Dots, but I think you can probably see a difference in the sort of credibility of what we're posting and how we act with the subject.
Yes, I can, definitely. There's no doubt about that. Now, Sheva, it's almost April now, and you are starting a campaign and a month of action. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, it's not strictly my campaign. April for years now has been a month of action that in Australia, Canada, America, it's very big. They have massive loads of events and marches and all kinds of things going on. There's a group called the Innocence Revolution that have picked on the date 14th of April, and there's a lot of events linking up to sort of mutually promote and support each other on the 14th. Over here, we've begun what we're calling Join the Dots. And we're sort of mixing it up a bit. We're trying to create a space where there can be a program of events, there can be a database of what's going on in the world of child abuse, and we're building to that. But in the meantime, there's events coming up in April over here. We've got the 28th of March is Pedo Britain Day, which is a hashtag, and you can find that on Madland's blog or our blog, which is Join the Dots. Mm-hmm. And then on the 14th, I'm doing a flash mob in London, and someone else is probably doing it in Manchester too, where it's all still forming, hoping people are going to contact us and want to sort of get on board and help. But on the 21st, there's going to be a big demonstration in Wrexham, Wales, and really protesting the fact that the Gillings report hasn't been released, given the historic cover-ups of the children's homes in Wales. And that just does seem very relevant right now, that we keep the pressure on, because none of the outage of child abuse has really come about willingly, except by pressure from within the survivor movement.
Yeah, that's very, very true indeed. Yeah,
it's sad but true.
And this will be a genuine campaign, and which is being inclusive. No one's going to push anyone out of the way or take over or try and hijack anything in this particular one.
No, we're sort of aware of that danger now, and I suppose we're on the lookout for it, if you like, but we're mainly being joined up. A lot of people, I held back really for possibly too long with the Holly Gregg campaigners and what was going on, but when it really came to a head for me, and then I started being called a pedo lover and things, and found out how many other survivors had been, and the amount of abuse that was going on around it, I had to speak out.
It was unbelievable. They would dare. How dare they say that? Paedophile sectors. It's just unbelievable.
It's awful, and it's really been almost like an aha has gone out, which went out in that meeting that day when we met. There was a sort of relief that people finally had an understanding of why they might have done this, or why it mattered, and what it had actually covered up, not revealed anything that was of substance. And there's been, I would say, even more respect and solidity within the movement than ever before.
I think so. I think that achieved an awful lot, that event. It really did. A lot of people have come off the fence with that event. Sorry to dwell on this, listeners, but I think it is very important, that this comes out, because we must not make this mistake again. It is really, really important we don't go down this area again. But I myself was sort of when I first came across this information, I was very indignant about it, and I thought, this can't be true, surely not. And then I in the end I suggested, I contacted both sides in the debate, and I suggested they got together and we have a kind of maybe a discussion about it publicly to try and sort it out. And the host group were lovely. They immediately got back to me and they spoke to me, and it resulted in the radio show Program 26, where we have a little roundtable discussion. And the Holly Gregg campaign were completely different. They didn't even write back to me. They posted a very, very bitchy and very, very snide article on their blog, calling me, basically saying I was being self-indulgent, and why should I get involved with me? Why should they get involved with me? Because all I want to do is pander to paedophile protectors and stuff like this, and shills, and it was really quite horrible. But
that horrifies me. It really does, and especially as they kind of themselves up as being some kind of flagship of the survivor movement.
I did.
And then they treat people in such a way that I just find that really appalling and shameful. It's hard to know how much was by design, how much by accident. There's a lot of emotions and loyalties, but it's getting out of hand when it becomes that you're not allowed to question without such horrible insults and accusations flying.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the good news is I think we have made a lot of progress with that meeting. You yourself coming along to meet, and that other lady who spoke there, the short-haired lady, you both did a lot of good.
Kathy.
Kathy, that's it, yeah, I spoke to her as well. She's, so that's really...
Well, I think I said too, though, that if you actually look at the long-standing, serious sites on this subject, you will not find Holy Grail mentioned. I mean, I'm looking at the moment for good support sites so that we can make sure we've got them on the blog, so that people can access support if they need it. And I was looking at a site that's specifically for survivors of ritual abuse, and it's been going for 20 years. And if you put Holly Gregg in the search bar, it's not there.
Yeah. I mean,
that really tells you something.
It certainly does indeed, and I appreciate the Holly Gregg host group were very brave. Those four ladies, and Pyrite and Latex Lil and the others, and yourself, of course, and Kathy, who resisted the pressure put on her, and we all resisted the pressure that had been put on us, and I think we've done a lot of good. I think we really have. And now, in the last, we're nearly at the end of the interview now, Sheva. In the last few minutes, do you want to just explain again how people can get in touch with you and how they can find out more about Join the Dots?
Okay. Well, we're on Facebook with a page which is called Join the Dots. Our slogans. Our logo is easy to spot. It's a big red dot with Join the Dots. We're having a bit of a pop at, we are saying, basically, look, the institutions, charities, and whoever else that have raised billions of pounds for this, they haven't really done enough. And we think we can do better with less. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to gather up people and create more momentum for everybody on this, in the right way, though. Yeah. And knowing that we've got lots of different opinions or beliefs or ideas around it, but we definitely all agree on one thing, that child abuse must not continue, and it must not continue to be covered up by those in power who could be changing it.
Definitely not.
But we've got a blog as well. Shall I read that out?
Yep, sure. The URL or address.
It's childabusejointhedots.wordpress.com.
And for listeners, there's links in the description box. There's links in the HPANWO blog at the moment, so you can go there and click that. Okay, and I'm Sheva Burton on Facebook if people want to find me. But this is something that we're sort of growing at the moment, and we're just hoping that people will get on board and help us, create events or add to events or help them to become more creative. There's a lot of art, poetry and music out there that survivors have been creating for a long time, and I'm really hoping to sort of end up with some massive, gorgeous event that also celebrates the strength and resilience that the movement has shown, and the courage to keep going, because we've had so many setbacks and false things, and we thought we've got somewhere, and then a law changes. I could go on and on about the setbacks that we've had. Yeah. Right, well, Sheva Burton, I want to thank you once again for appearing on HPANWO Radio, and it's been great talking to you.
And you, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.